Cannabis is one of the largest and fastest growing industries in the US. And just like any other business, these businesses need accountants, bookkeepers, CPAs, and tax preparers. But unlike any other business, due to the federal illegality of cannabis, many of the big four accounting firms and many of the mid-tier to large accounting firms won't even touch the cannabis industry. In fact, some of the smaller one-man shop boutique firms are scared to touch this industry due to the fear of the unknown in dealing with a federally illegal business. This leaves little to no competition to smaller one-man and boutique firms to gain a foothold in this industry and build a solid book of business in the legal U.S. cannabis industry. Want to know which services you can offer? Well, stay tuned. Let's get into the weeds. Hi, my name is Naomi. I am a CPA and I work exclusively in the U.S. legal cannabis industry. And on this channel, I teach other accountants how to serve this industry with confidence, avoiding the feelings of overwhelm and confusion. In this video, we will not only just discuss the top 3 services you can provide, we will discuss what those duties are and how to price those services for your first or next cannabis client. The first service we'll be discussing are cleanup services. I've been working in the cannabis industry for the better part of 4 years, and the number one service that I've seen 100% of the time that was necessary is cleanup. I have yet to encounter a cannabis client with a clean set of books. And the reason for this is many accountants are still not familiar with this industry. They still don't understand what it takes to do proper accounting in this industry. Some of the common issues that we find in the accounting records are incorrect chart of accounts. So the cannabis industry is a new industry, and many of the out-the-box accounting software products do not have cannabis company that you can select with some of the common chart of the accounts for that company. So many accountants will just use the chart of accounts for another company and not modify for cannabis, which can lead to incorrect tax reporting. So these companies are already paying a significant amount of taxes. We don't want a mistake in their chart of accounts to cause them to overpay even more in taxes. A quick win right off the bat, if you take a look at the chart of accounts for your potential client, is to identify that their chart of accounts is incorrect and they may be overpaying in taxes. Another issue that we commonly find is just incorrect reporting of balance sheet accounts. You see account balances that are going the wrong direction, like negative cash. A lot of times the reason why this is a common issue is due to the cash nature of cannabis. And if you haven't had a chance to understand the cash issues with cannabis, check out this video. A lot of times when cannabis companies are starting up, they may start with a bank account that subsequently gets shut down. They may start with using cash or transactions from their own personal banking or their own personal credit cards. And a lot of times these things don't get captured properly in the books and records, and you'll see huge negative cash balances, which is not possible. This often happens because a lot of times these operators start with different legal entities using the bank accounts, personal bank accounts, or other business bank accounts until they're able to finally get banking for their cannabis operations. And a lot of times those transactions don't come over into the final set of books. We see fixed assets that are incorrectly reported. You can walk into a dispensary or even a cultivation facility and see hundreds of thousands of dollars of leasehold improvements and fixed assets and lighting and all these different things that are necessary to run these operations. However, you look on the books and records and you won't see any of that. A lot of times the reason that this happens is because cannabis operators depend on friends and family loans, and they may get funding from a friend to get that operation up and running. That transaction may go into their personal account or another business account, and it just doesn't always get captured properly, but we do need to ensure that those are on the books and records. Another thing that we see is we don't even see inventory. A lot of accountants don't even understand how to keep inventory for cannabis companies, and you won't see finished goods inventory on the books and records. It's important that we get those on the books and records. And finally, as I mentioned, lending is an issue when it comes to cannabis. And when you're getting friends and family loans, you may not have a legal contract or agreement between the two of you. As the accountant, will come in and we'll see significant debt payments going out without any debt on the books. What's the other side of that transaction? So it's important that we clean that up so that we can properly account for all those transactions. Other common issues that we find are accounts aren't being reconciled reconciled, you'll go to the client and say, hey, can you show me that you're have $100,000 in the bank account? And they'll look at you sideways, say, yeah, we don't have that much in the bank account. We also find that a lot of accounting transactions are missing on the income statement. So there's a lot of common transactions that you would expect to see, like rent payments or utility payments or even payroll payments. And you'll look at the income statement and you won't see any of these things. So you'll have to ask your client what's going on. And a lot of times these aren't being captured. So all that stuff will need to be cleaned up. Oftentimes we'll find that transactions aren't properly supported. We'll see transactions in the financial statements, but we won't be able to justify that transactions or support that transaction because we won't find receipts or invoices. And finally, you may walk into an operator and there won't be any historical books or records at all. And so you'll come in and you'll be starting from scratch and trying to create these books and records for historical periods to get this operator caught up. Your cleanup responsibilities include reviewing all legal and financial contracts, ensuring that the business is registered and properly licensed. You'll also track invoices and receipts and organize historical data into financial records. If you are a tax preparer, you will prepare historical tax returns. This is at the income tax level, both federal and state, as well as state excise tax, sales and use tax, and unemployment tax if necessary. You will also need to implement accounting systems and processes and standard operating procedures. You should expect to conduct account reconciliations, prepare financial statements, and organize the books and records and more. So let's get into the fun part, pricing these services. The way I look at this is I think about how much would it have cost if I had been in place from the beginning of operations as necessary? If I determine that the monthly fees to support this client should be $2,500 a month, and let's say that they need 18 months of cleanup services. If they had contracted with me at the beginning of that period, that would have been $45,000 over that period. Now, granted, we are performing these cleanup services within a condensed time frame. I'm saying 45 days to 3 months. However, just because we're able to do these services within 3 months does not mean that we're not doing 18 months of work. So you should price accordingly. Now, I don't go in and charge the full rate for what it would have cost me to be there for 18 months, but I do use that as my basis, and a lot of times I just cut that in half. I might charge $22,500 at max to do these cleanup services. Then from there, I think about how much work is this going to take? Am I going to need to hire help? Is this going to take 45 days or is it going to take the full 3 months? Keep in mind, we are condensing the timeline. However, we are going to be working around the clock and may even need to hire help to support these services. So make sure that you're pricing these adequately. I would not want to drop below $1,000 per month. So my range would probably be $18,000 to $22,500 for these services. And then I would make sure that I properly communicate this to this client and help them understand that they are saving money. Because if I had been in place, or if they had the proper person in place, they would have been paying $45,000 for these services. Now let's look at service number 2. And service number 2 is kind of a combination of service. We can lump these into consulting services. And I like to call these your get your foot in the door type services. And so there's a lot of things that cannabis operators need. Their current staff just doesn't have the capacity to do. Doing the accounting for cannabis operations is a very manual process. It requires a lot of work and there's a lot of moving parts. And a lot of times a one-man or even a two-man firm can't handle everything. So they need to outsource some of these services to external consultants. One of these services could be implementing cash controls. So if you meet a cannabis operator and they are concerned about their cash management, maybe their current accountant doesn't have the proper background or skill set to put a cash management system in place, and you have this, you can offer those services and implement a full cash management system. And if you need one, I provide my Calculating Cannabis students with a full-on cash management system, which is a business in a box that you can plug and play and offer these consulting services as a one-time service or even an ongoing monthly reoccurring service to these cannabis operators. Depending on how big this this project is, these services can run you from $2,500 on up. As the CFO of a cannabis operation, it took me upwards of 2 months to get a full cash management system in place for my client. I would have definitely seen the value in paying an external consultant to come in, implement these controls, and train our staff. Not only do you need to implement the controls need to be monitored. And so there's an opportunity for, if you do a bang-up job with implementing these controls, getting hired for an ongoing basis for monthly monitoring. Monthly monitoring of just one system, cash, is not going to be as valuable as monthly monitoring an entire accounting department. So I would say these services may fall below $1,000 a month just for monitoring the cash logs and providing any additional training depending on what you find. However, this is a nice thing that you can do just to get your foot in the door, build relationships, and maybe down the road you may get hired to do the full-on monthly bookkeeping for this client. And finally, our last service that we are going to discuss is monthly accounting services. Now, this is by far the most profitable of the list because this is a service that will generate monthly reoccurring revenue. You can start doing monthly accounting services, and these businesses grow very rapidly. As your client grows, your monthly fees will grow, not because the client is getting bigger, well, partly, but mainly because it's going to be more complicated. There's going to be more work involved. If your client goes from 1 dispensary to 3 dispensaries, you have to keep the books and records straight for 3 different dispensaries. You'll have more employees, you'll have more inventory, you'll have more fixed assets, more sales transactions, and more bank accounts to manage. So as your clients grow, your fees will grow, and this is the most profitable. Monthly bookkeeping is required in the cannabis industry. Some other industries, you may not need this. You can probably do it on a quarterly basis or an annual basis, but with cannabis, they're very specialized. Their books are required to be kept on GAAP accrual accounting, and if they are banked, a lot of times the banks will require financial statements on a monthly or quarterly basis, and you'll need to keep those books on a monthly basis, even if they're required on a quarterly basis, because the banks perform a mini audit on a quarterly or monthly basis on these books and records. And if you're just keeping them on a quarterly basis and they're looking month over month, they're going to wonder why there is this huge jump at the end of the quarter, because that's where you've booked all the transactions. So it's important that these books and records are kept consistent and they're seeing a consistent trend to not trigger any concerns with the bank. So these are just a few services that you can offer. But to my Calculating Cannabis members, I offer a full list of 53 services that you can offer in the cannabis industry as an accounting professional. If you would like to learn more, take advantage of the 30-day free trial to the National Association of Cannabis Accounting and Tax Professionals. The link is in the bio. Until next time, stay in the weeds.